Sarah Todd used to cover the Sixers here locally. She's now with the Desert News covering the Utah Jazz and was in Oklahoma City the other night when that whole bizarre situation went down. So let's get a little firsthand account on all that, how that all happened, and hopefully some normalcy has kind of set in. Sarah, how you been?
Been doing good. Normalcy is a weird word right now. I guess that's a little subjective. I'm currently on a 14-day quarantine in my apartment, and the square footage is not great, but so I'm sure that once like day 5 to 10 to 14 comes around, I'm going to be going a little bit crazy.
Now, this is after, because you were in the arena in Oklahoma City the other night, correct?
Yes, I cover the team full time, so I'm around them every day.
So you've been with the team all through their recent road trip here, and obviously, now you were tested, correct?
Yes, I was tested. I tested negative.
Okay. Now, on that there then, I find that to be interesting. Like, you tested negative. How many other people do you know that were tested who also came up negative?
Well, there were, aside from Rudy Gobert, there were 58 tests done that night. That's players, medical staff, training staff, PR, broadcast crew, and then me and 2 other traveling writers. Mm-hmm. And Rudy Gobert's test was done earlier in the day, but of that night's test, the only person that tested positive was Donovan Mitchell.
Okay, so with that, I mean, does that make you feel a little bit better, potentially, just in a life question, that 58 people tested, a lot of you travel together, we're talking about how quickly this can spread, and of 58, only 2 walked out of there with this virus, where it seemed like if you were in that room, you were basically in touch with somebody else, that you were going to get this. So does that make you feel better in just general in life?
Yeah, and I think the information that I received afterwards, like consulting with members of public health department, the people who were there that were testing us and trying to give us as much information as possible, that helped a lot too, because it gave us a sense of actually what we were dealing with. And so as far as Gobert's contact with the team, he did report when he had symptoms. He told the team, I'm not feeling well. These are my symptoms. He was checked out by medical staff. And from that moment, he was kept away from the team. And so the fact that they did keep him away from the team, he didn't go to shoot around that morning, and then he was tested for the virus. The fact that it got to one person, I think, is actually saying a lot about how quickly they acted. And as far as, being a young and healthy person, I'm not necessarily concerned about myself, even if I had tested positive, but the idea of spreading it to immunocompromised people or somebody else that maybe doesn't have the immune system that I do, the quarantine, that's the reason for that. And I'm not necessarily worried, and I feel good.
Sarah, so Rudy Gobert, it's kind of like a karma situation here. So everyone knew that he was joking about the coronavirus at one point. And side note, were you in that press conference where he was touching all the phones and mics?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Did your phone get touched?
Yeah.
No, but I do want to kind of dispel some information about that, because it's really frustrating to see kind of the discord and what's going on around that. First of all, Rudy Gobert is like the least malicious person that I know. He's an extremely nice and caring person. At no point was he going to maliciously be like, oh, I'm going to infect all you guys with coronavirus. Like, that's not a thing that actually exists. And also, from everything that I've been told from the CDC and the public health departments, the way that this virus spreads is through respiratory droplets. And so that's talking to someone, breathing in, and what they're putting out, coughing in someone's face, sneezing on someone's face. That's how the virus is most effectively and efficiently spread. Also, when someone is asymptomatic, first of all, there's no reason for them to even believe that they have coronavirus. And also, it is incredibly unlikely that they spread the virus while they're not symptomatic. And so, like, for me, I tested negative, and so I could go around and touch anything I want and cough on anyone. And later on, if I become symptomatic, that's when they're worried about me being contagious, not now while I'm not symptomatic. And so the fact that he touched anything means nothing to me. It shouldn't have been scary. It's not even a big deal. It was maybe like an ill-timed joke, but it was also the first day that the media situation had changed where we weren't talking to him in a scrum. It was at a podium, and it wasn't even a press conference. That was a post-shoot-around media availability, and it was the first day that it was changed to that sort of podium situation. And so it was weird for everyone. We all laughed in the room because we were like, oh, this is weird, and like it was just a weird situation. I have no ill will toward him, and I don't think that anybody else does either.
No, thank you for clarifying that, because on Twitter, people were coming at Woj, people were coming at like Gobert, and it's like, come on, he was joking. We were all uninformed at that moment. It's just like many things on Twitter, a little bit ridiculous. But yesterday I saw you write an article for the Desert News Online, just kind of detailing your experience leading up to when it was canceled. If you just want to maybe walk us through that scene and just how weird and eerie it was and what you went through leading up to the game being actually canceled.
Yeah, so, I mean, we were sitting in our seats on press row getting ready for the game to tip off. I mean, they'd already gone through the starters, the music was starting, the officials had the ball in their hands. I mean, we were seconds from tip off. And then all of a sudden somebody sprints on the court. There's kind of like a kerfuffle. Everything was a little frantic. The music keeps going a little bit longer than it should. And so it was like, what's going on? And then, like, before we know it, the players are walking off the court. And so, I mean, as a reporter, we immediately, like, jumped into, like, journalist hat on, what's going on, getting on the phone, trying to figure out where we can go. But there's tunnels that are blocked off. We're not allowed in certain hallways, and that's not normal. And then the PA announcer had said, we're waiting for league confirmation to get the game started. And I've never heard that, and I've been covering the NBA for 8 years. And so we were like, league confirmation for what? Like, that's not a thing. And so, and also when the players walked off the court, some of them had turned around and like waved to the crowd. And so it seemed like they already knew that this was over. And so we're trying to figure out what's going on. And then before we know it, the PA, not really before we know it, they had a halftime performer come out and like people were shooting off T-shirt cannons. And so it was clearly stalling for a while. And then the PA announcer says, due to unforeseen circumstances, the game has been postponed. You are all safe. To which we're all like, well, that's ominous. Please don't say that in your announcement.
Yeah. Everything's fine, but leave immediately.
Yes, exactly. And then there were reports that there were law enforcement officials that were ready to evacuate the building. And so we're like, oh, God, this really doesn't seem great. Either way, we run down. We try to get as close to the team locker room as we can, but no one's letting us go into our usual paths as media members. And so we're trying to figure out what's going on with the team. And then the report comes out that Rudy had tested positive for COVID-19. And then all of a sudden the mood sort of shift. Because it's, yes, I'm trying to get the story, but also, I'm sorry, am I safe?
Yeah.
And so it became very quickly a situation where I was concerned about, okay, I've had direct contact with this guy every day. Like, he's around me, talking to me. I get very close to him. He's sweating on me. Like, I don't know what my risk factor is because I'm completely uneducated at that point about everything that's going on. And so it was a very weird mood, and we were in the dark for quite a few hours about what was going on with us and our safety and whether or not we would be tested as the writers who cover the team. And it was a very, very long night.
Yeah, I bet it was, and I'm sure you're still recovering, I'm sure, as you will be, unfortunately, for a little while now. But Sarah Todd's with us, covers the Utah Jazz, formerly covering the Philadelphia 76ers. And this is just more of an opinion question. I'm not expecting you to have inside info, but the NBA now is saying that they're shut down or postponed for the next 30 days. What's the impact in your mind for the NBA and the Jazz? And do they make up these games? Are they going to play sooner than later? You know, what's your thoughts on everything now logistically?
I think it's a sort of indicator, if we're looking at sort of a stone to look at of how long this could actually last, is the Chinese basketball, they postponed their games, and it was sort of an indefinite time period because that's a country that's already gone through sort of the worst of the coronavirus epidemic. And so if we're looking at that as any sort of indication of what we're looking at, their basketball was shut down for 10 weeks. And so 30 days is a wildly optimistic outlook, I think. And I mean, I don't think that we've seen the worst of this virus, and it's still going to spread. And, testing is short in the U.S. compared to other countries, and we're behind the 8 ball already. And so as far as, containing crowds and also learning, there's no way that it's just going to be 2 players on the Utah Jazz who test positive. I mean, testing is going to go through and people are going to develop symptoms. And so we're 4 weeks, 30 days, that's not a lot of time at all in the grand scheme of things. And then so if you look at it past that, what could a 4-week difference make in the NBA? Well, that pushes back the playoffs, which could push back the draft, which would push back free agency. Well, then we're looking at contracts. We have to renegotiate or change wording in contracts because there are specific dates in those. And then if you go farther into the summer, that's going to impact USA basketball or international play and Olympic basketball. And so I think a way more realistic outlook would be that the season is over and we're going to have to move forward from it.
Very interesting. Sarah Todd at NBA Sarah on Twitter to kind of, if you want to go back to her timeline and kind of go back through the account, you do a lot of talking about, Rudy and what happened there. So are you back in Salt Lake City, or are you? Did they allow you to travel out of Oklahoma City?
Right. I was not allowed commercial travel since I'd been in direct contact with a confirmed case. And so the Utah state legislator, the lieutenant governor of Utah, worked with the Utah Jazz and both state public health departments, and they got me and the other writers and broadcasters on the chartered flight with the Utah Jazz back to Utah, so that then the Utah State Public Health Department could lead us through what the next steps are, which are a quarantine for 14 days following last contact with the confirmed case.
So they basically, you get the test administered then in Oklahoma City, then you get this whole night where the flight takes you back, and then you're back in Salt Lake City. So now you're basically told you must stay in your apartment for the next 14 days, and then after that you can just go back to
the outside
quote-unquote
world.
Normalcy?
Yeah, and they've told us, you can leave your house and you can go places, but, keep 8 feet between you and anybody else. So it's not like I can't really go places where I'm going to be in contact with people. So for more or less, it's inside.
Was the process pretty easy, though? I mean, there's so much confusion about, can I get a test? And I know it's probably different for you because you were with the team to get the test administered to you, probably a lot easier than random Joe who might feel some symptoms.
Right. And then if you're feeling, and I mean, I think a lot of the confusion is that, if you're having regular cold symptoms, should you be tested? And how easy is it to get the test? But even for Rudy Gobert, he had to go through, 4 or so tests before they would even give him the test, because they wanted to test him for strep throat, influenza, other respiratory illnesses, and then coronavirus. And so then he got tested earlier in the day with his results coming back, like I said, right before tip-off. I mean, the results came into the Oklahoma State Department of Public Health, and as soon as that positive test came back, they called the team, which is why they sprinted out onto the court to give them the news. And so that's why that happened all in real time. And the only reason they kind of had tests ready to go and a whole contingency plan set up is, number one, the NBA each team was required to contact CDC and public health departments in their respective states and have a plan set up for if something were to happen, because there's such large groups of people that are involved with any kind of NBA setting. And then also, because they already had one test that was coming in and it came in positive, they knew that there was going to be more people that came in contact with that positive test. And so that's where people in different states, those are the people that are at risk and will be tested, are people that come in contact with a confirmed case or people that are showing the symptoms, which the big ones are fever and shortness of breath.
Now, Sarah, you used to cover the Sixers, and I wonder if what goes through your mind is the Jazz played the Pistons played the Sixers. You got Christian Wood leaning on Embiid all night. I mean, you wonder the people who cover the Sixers and everything going on there. Does that kind of wow, the amount of times that basketball changed hands and the guys bumping on each other, got people that I know in Philly, that could be as close as possible for someone like you who worked here for a couple of years. Is that something that is racing through your mind after this?
After I mean, at first, yes, when I heard that it was Gobert, I thought, oh, how many people has he been in contact with? But after talking with the different governing bodies involved with the actual testing and public health, less concerned, because I think that a lot of the fear is anybody that he's touched is at risk right now. But that's not exactly the situation, because the virus has a 14-day incubation period. And so that's why we're seeing all these reports that players are being quarantined for 2 weeks, because if you don't develop symptoms over 14 days, then you're fine. So that's me and everybody else. If we don't develop symptoms for 14 days, we don't have to get tested again. We don't have it. We're fine. And it's not like Rudy Gobert was coughing in the face of, 300 players over the last couple of weeks. It has to be a direct contact. And while you're bodied up against someone in the post or something like that, that could absolutely be contact. But we don't know what the day was that he contracted it and where he was within the incubation period. And so there is a small window of people that it could be. And also, we don't know if even he's the one. It's not like he's patient zero. He got it from someone.
Right.
And so that could also lead to a little bit of a domino effect. But I don't think that people should be as worried as it kind of seems that they are. At the same time, still be precautious and take preventative measures.
Well, and it's interesting that you say it, because I think at first it was like, well, if someone just touches you, like people saw him touch the phones and figured, oh my God, how many phones? And then boom, boom, boom.
Right.
And then it's down to, hey, that basketball went from every guy on the team, the ball boy, the coach who passes him the ball in warm-ups before the game. And you're thinking, if they touch something that he touched, then I feel that the listeners out there should feel pretty good that Sarah's saying no, it's more than just that. But I feel like people felt it was just as simple as he touched your phone, you have it. He touched the ball, he has it, and yada yada. So this is you're calming a lot of people down, I think, Sarah.
Yeah, and I mean, it was one of the questions that I specifically asked the epidemiologist from the Utah Public Health Department yesterday after we got off the plane. We had a consultation with them, and they gave us a lot of information. And I asked, I'm hearing a lot of reports about how long the virus can live on a surface for, and is that something that we should be worried about? And they very specifically said to us, yes, the virus can live somewhere, but that is not how it is being effectively spread. The way that the virus is being spread is through respiratory droplets. And so that is what we're trying to keep from happening. And that's why you're keeping a 6 to 8 foot distance from someone. It's not so that you don't touch something that they touch. It's so that you don't breathe in something that they're expelling.
Sarah, have you been communicating with any players, either on the Jazz or other, guys that you've built relationships with, covering the league for so long, or teams? I guess my question is, what now? What do these guys do?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's in sort of a waiting period right now. I've been in contact with quite a few people, and the league office has told people, stay in your market, stay where you are, and abide by the health officials' advisement of, keeping yourself quarantined for 14 days just so that you know that you don't develop symptoms and you're not at risk, and continue to take the preventative measures that the rest of the public has been told, increasing hygiene. And I mean, it's weird because I think we're all realizing how disgusting we all are. And especially sports reporters, you're thinking when's the last time that that local news station has cleaned off their mic or their mic flag,
Yep.
And so, personally, I can tell you that before this week, I don't think I'd ever Lysol wiped my voice recorder. And that's not an abnormally disgusting thing. That's just a rule of thumb disgusting thing for sports reporters. And so I think everybody, including the players, to your point, they're just in a waiting period. They don't know how long the league is going to be on hiatus. And so they're figuring things out just as we all are.
The minute that guy came out and announced that game was done, did you know in your mind this league is shutting down?
Yeah, how could they not? I was surprised, honestly, because I was on that road trip that was leading up to that. We'd had one home game in between the Oklahoma City game, and before that, a 4-game East Coast swing. And during that road trip, the last 2 games were back-to-back in Boston and Detroit, and it was weird because within the media contingency, we were looking around the arena and we kept hearing reports of, the virus spreading more, and we're all on commercial flights, so within that week, it was like, I was on 10 different flights, and we kept thinking, like, how much should we be worried, and why isn't anyone doing anything? Like, playing in arenas without fans, they've been discussing it for a week or so now, like, why isn't anything happening? And it was a matter of time before a player or someone player adjacent actually got the virus, and it was bound to happen, and it's just unfortunate that it had to happen in that way. I wasn't surprised at all. As soon as the game was called, I was like, oh, this thing is done. They're shutting everything down.
Yeah. Sarah Todd, NBA Sarah on Twitter, and, of course, the NBA season hitting the pause button. By the way, how are you enjoying – you've been in Golden State to cover the Warriors, so you saw one of the best teams. You were in Philly to see one of the most dysfunctional teams, right? And now you're in Utah, which has got to be one of the more interesting places to live.
I tell people all the time, I started covering the Warriors when they were not good, and then covered them through that 2015 championship. And so I saw, the basement of the NBA and then the pinnacle of it. And then in Philadelphia, I was there, through Burner Gate and everything that happened with Markelle Fultz. And so it was like, wow, it can't get any weirder than this. And then I come to Utah, and coronavirus spreads across the world. And so I keep saying it can't get any weirder, but I'm going to have to stop saying that.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, we appreciate it. I know you've been all over the place doing a lot of media, trying to get some sleep, and obviously you're quarantined, so you're probably looking for people to talk to, but we're glad you picked us. At NBA Sarah, Sarah Todd covers the Utah Jazz, and she's been on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Thanks so much, Sarah.
No problem. Thanks a lot, guys.